All right. Every year we gather in Las Vegas, or well, some of us do, and listen to AWS tell a glorious story of what they've done for the past year. They call this reInvent. So I figured I'd give my version of it slightly differently. For starters, it's not nearly as derivative as theirs, so we're simply going to call it Invent. That also means we're not named after an email subject line, which is a bit out of character for them, but we're going to roll with it. Turns out that even at reInvent, they don't refer to it as the reInvent keynote. If you walk around the Partner Expo floor, they refer to it as AWS Red Wedding because someone's getting murdered. Maybe it's you. And we play games and we have fun with it, and it tends to be an experience. Now, what does a reInvent keynote include? Well, there's something you can always depend on, and that is a truly sarcastic number of customer logos on a slide. So we're going to go ahead and do that. It might be time for some of us to get glasses. It's more an eye chart than almost anything else. This is supposed to engender trust. If all these companies are using AWS, you probably should be too. Doesn't that feel great? Wait, it gets worse. At AWS, they like to release more and more features and services every year. Most of those numbers are true. And the goal is to look at that and think, they sure are moving quickly. The problem is you look at that and you think, they're moving quickly, and I'm feeling a rising and existential sense of dread because no one can keep up with all of it. You're trying to figure out what just got released that you could use, but you're never going to see it. But I'm going to put this on the slide here and talk about it like it's a good thing. So what have we released over the past year at AWS? Great question. A headline feature and service that came out recently is called MSK, their Managed Streaming Kafka service. It's a great way of passing messages from one place to another. And you can use it instead of, for example, Kinesis Firehose, Kinesis Streams, SQS, SNS, Amazon MQ, building something horrible out of EC2 yourself, EventBridge, which we'll get to a little bit later, IoT Events, Route 53, which can be made to do anything. It's my favorite database. IoT Message Broker, CloudWatch Event Bus, which they gleefully hurl other services under. AppSync Subscriptions, Pinpoint, which most people are not convinced is a real thing, and DynamoDB Streams. We think that MSK is the best message passing service we've ever built until 4 more get released later today. And unlike many of my jokes, none of those things are fake. They all exist as real services. We also always talk during AWS keynotes about an update on DMS, the Database Migration Service. They like highlighting it in particular because it gives yet another opportunity to put the boots to Oracle, which is always fun. AWS is over 5 times larger than Oracle, but their crippling insecurity means that they need to make fun of them at every opportunity, which is increasingly a poor look. That's my job. The Database Migration Service has migrated over 200,000 workloads, and this number keeps going up in every keynote. Many of those workloads went into Aurora, their answer to commercial database solutions that doesn't screw you half to death and then spit on you after the fact. It is the fastest growing relational database in the world that's named after a Disney princess. Coming in as a second place to most common target for migrations was, of course, their premier relational database, Route 53. Wait, you might think, that's DNS, not a database. Here at AWS, we firmly believe that anything can be a database, so perhaps you should shut up. Also, the part we don't like to say out loud is that the vast majority of those database migrations were, in fact, one moron customer who got something stuck in a loop. Speaking of moron customers, I'd like to invite one to the stage. Please welcome Francois, currently the SVP of buying keynote speaking slots. I'll put your hand on those.
Thank you, Corey. Thank you for having me for your Invent keynote. We love AWS. We love it so much, which is something I have to say because we're spending so much money with them. I'm personally driving to Seattle every month and just dumping a lot of money on their backyard. When we look at AWS services, we treat it like Pokemons. We want to catch them all. We want to catch every single one of them. Even if we don't need them, we want it. We're a bank. We only need like 4 servers and 1 database. We want them all, which make our infrastructure pretty terrible. But we have a good designer, so that makes for like a very fancy graph in a few seconds. So if you want to grab a quick picture, feel free to do that. But what I'm really excited about today is our multi-cloud strategy. AWS is great. Just
Mike, cut his mic. You're not allowed to talk about multi-cloud. Remember, we've covered this. We are the only cloud. Only cloud. Go sit there. Go. Bop. Do people not read it? So EventBridge. We released EventBridge, which thought you would like. It lets you integrate various SaaS offerings out there into your serverless and event-driven architectures, which is awesome. Normally, a sensible company would release something like this in developer preview, but this is AWS. We released this into general availability, and no one saw it coming. It was awesome. And that's because our engineers respect the NDAs that prevent them from speaking to the public about these services. More to the point, they also respect the second NDA that we make them sign that prevents them from speaking about anything they're doing to the CloudFormation team. We figured that those folks are already kind of sad and could use a little bit more surprise in their lives. We also continue to invest extraordinarily heavily in our Systems Manager suite of services. Here you see a bunch of them. Guess which ones we made up and don't exist? Fewer than you'd think. Later at reInvent this year, I'll be giving my talk on a management system that I wrote for AWS Systems Manager Session Manager. So if you have trouble getting into that talk, in the back of the room is an Amazon employee. So if you need a seat, go talk to the AWS Systems Manager Session Manager Management System Session Manager, and they will get you squared away. Naming is hard. We've also been investing heavily in various forms of digital snake oil. To tell you more about them, I'd like to invite one of my colleagues up to the stage. Please welcome Dr. Peter Lemongello, our VP of Blockchain, AI, Machine Learning, and Snake Oil.
Thank you, Corey.
Of course.
Thank you. Thank you very much. This past year, we launched AWS Managed Blockchain. This is a great service for folks who want to get started with blockchain quickly and easily instead of doing real work. And over in the machine learning space, we have a bunch of exciting features to announce. None of these will actually help you make money, since these tools are great at combing through vast quantities of data and finding everything except a business model. That said, you need a lot of storage and compute for these to work, so we're selling digital pickaxes for a new gold rush. Most notable of those services are Forecast and Predict. They claim to identify trends super well, but somehow your AWS bill is still a giant surprise every month. Oh no, I just said the quiet part out loud. Back to you, Corey.
Thank you, Doctor. I appreciate that. So Control Tower went GA. That's a service that lets you spin up a bunch of AWS accounts. Oh yeah, we forgot to mention, we probably should have told you this before. Originally, one AWS account per company was something we told everyone, and we just sort of pivoted that bit of wisdom without remembering to tell folks about it. So if you have resources now in one AWS account, like an S3 bucket, and want to move it somewhere else, your clear migration path to do that is called It Must Suck to Be You. We also launched a new service called Amazon Ground Station. This service talks to satellites in space passing overhead. We slapped antennas onto the roof of a bunch of our buildings, and when those satellites are in the right spot, they talk to our ground station. Yes, this is a real service, in fact. It came out of our limited partnership with Disney, because I assure you, this is some goofy bullshit. We built a service to talk to space, but yeah, okay, we're absolutely not going to build a service that does whatever your horseshit company does, so you have nothing to worry about, partners. It's fine. We also have a corporate mandate this year to compete with Alphabet. Unfortunately, we misunderstood what Andy was talking about. Perhaps he had just taken a bite of a sandwich. It's not clear. But whatever the reason, we thought he wanted us to compete instead with the English alphabet. So we did. We would like to buy a vowel. Curiously, we're running out of letters at this point. The real reason that we have all of these various instance types and families is that two SVPs at Amazon are playing an incredibly challenging game of Battleship, and we're not entirely clear how big the board is at this point. There are currently, no joke, over 200 instances of different types that you can spin up in US East 1 alone. Are you using the right one for your workload? Of course not. Lastly, let's talk a little bit about security, because no reInvent or Invoke keynote is complete without it. This is called the shared responsibility model. And this is why when you misconfigure an S3 bucket or something and wind up yet again on the front page of the New York Times, we will tell you it's your fault for not being able to master all of the intricate and difficult parts of this security model. Sure, it's horribly complicated and fraught with peril to the point of lunacy, but this is the best kind of problem from our perspective. Someone who isn't us. Of course, we also can't have a conference without thanking our platinum sponsors, namely Date a Dog, which is Tinder for pets, and PagerDuty, the You Will Never Sleep Well Again company. I'd also like to thank Mike Graff from Dolby, who played the part of VP Peter Lemongello. Dolby, you've certainly heard them, if not heard of them. And Francois Lagier from Cloud Forecast, who helped with this. And now some real talk. As much fun as getting up and indulging my ongoing love affair with the sound of my own voice is, these jokes are all funny and a little uncomfortable because they're based on half-truths. How do you keep up with these things? I started a newsletter last week in AWS 2 years ago under the expectation someone would point out to me, oh, idiot, go sign up for this thing instead and don't duplicate work. Instead, people signed up for it because there is no good answer. We all feel overwhelmed. When I started using AWS, I was almost paralyzed by looking at the sheer number of options and services that they had available. And in those days, there were 12. There's now over 170, which is just mind-boggling when you stop to think about it. Who here holds all of that in their head? No one. We have long since passed the Rubicon where I can very convincingly talk to you about services that don't exist and not get called out on it by AWS employees. It's really fun to do that. They don't like it, but neither do we. They do a lot of good work. Again, 90 to 95% of what Amazon does is fascinating and reasonably well executed. They have some weaknesses like naming, the console, complexity, but the things that could be a little bit better is where most of my snark and sarcasm tends to live. People sometimes take the wrong message from talks like this, that I despise them. If I actually had that much problem with them, this is not so much a talk as it is a desperate cry for help. Anyway, thank you all for listening to me flap my jaw in the breeze. I'll give you back a few minutes of your afternoon. Be sure to catch the next talk. I'm Corey Quinn. Thanks for listening.